Mick Foley is credited for putting his body on the line for the business, but not nearly as much for his efforts to elevate his peers. Foley was a rising star during the late 90s, as the WWE saw him as a potential main eventer. However, he was also the best supporting actor for many other wrestlers back then, and even when he was semi-retired. Foley didn't just put his opponents over, he always put his body through hell to make them look like they were the real deal. So the following looks at how the greatest kingmaker in wrestling made his rivals look spectacular in defeat. First we got The Rock. Foley elevated the rising star in The Rock when the Great One became one of the hottest acts in the business. Before they started teaming up as Rock and Sock Connection, they were bitter rivals as they fought each other for the WWE Championship several times. Foley put over The Rock when he won his first WWE title at Survivor Series 1998, and again when he lost the rematch. Rock returned the favour, losing to Foley and resulting in Foley's first ever world title, a moment which flipped the Monday Night War in favour of the WWE. Later on, they had their legendary I Quit match at Royal Rumble 1999, where Foley not only put Rock over, but he also took several brutal chair shots to the head. Foley would eventually win the title again, and then lose it to The Rock, ending their legendary rivalry. Next, we've got The Undertaker. Foley's very first feud in the WWE was his program with The Undertaker. They had all sorts of extreme gimmick matches, which included the first ever Boiler Room Brawl, and Buried Alive matches. Despite being the bigger star, The Undertaker mostly went over. After a long break, Foley and Taker continued the rivalry, leading to their era-defining Hell in a Cell matchup at King of the Ring 1998. And this is where Foley shocked the world, including The Undertaker, because he took some extra steps to make the bout go from entertaining to historic. Foley got Taker to throw him off the top of the cell, onto the announce table, and after the fall, and separating his shoulder, he got back up to the top again. I'm sure we all know what happened next. It was followed up by a reluctant Taker chokeslamming him off the top, onto and through the ring canvas. And the image of a bloodied Foley with his tooth in his nose is just a haunting one. Next we got Triple H. The rivalry between Triple H and Mick Foley was one of the best during the Attitude Era. It wouldn't be an understatement to say that Triple H became a megastar thanks to Foley. Trips beat Foley for the first ever WWE title on Raw a day after he won it. Foley then put the new champion over in a Boiler Room Brawl on SmackDown, and then in another match on Raw, followed by another Boiler Room Brawl with the odds stacked against him. The duo then met in their memorable Street Fight at Royal Rumble 2000. The two beat the living shit out of each other, but Trips won by Pedigree and Foley face first onto thumbtacks. Foley would then face Hunter in the second most venerated Hell in a Cell match of his career at No Way Out 2000. It was another brutal outing, as he took another bump onto the Spanish announce table from a lower height than the one he took against The Undertaker though. The match would end as Triple H delivered a devastating back body drop on the top of the cell, sending him crashing through down to the canvas. Next we got Shawn Michaels. By the time Foley arrived in the WWE, Shawn Michaels had become the biggest star in the company. The two faced each other at In Your House 10, with HBK's WWE Championship on the line. The only bad thing about this bout was the ending, as it was a disqualification. The match was stellar though, as both legends showcased their range and expert ring psychology. Foley had asked Michaels to stiff him, which still gives many the impression that it was a shoot. HBK was put to the test, as it was the first time he faced an unorthodox opponent like Foley. While it wasn't centered around weapons, Foley still forced him to brawl like never before. Not being able to win the match, Foley pulled some of his hair out in agony, and even stabbed his own knee to regain sensation in it. As I said, HBK retained due to disqualification, but he did look like a badass thanks to his performance. Next we got Steve Austin. Mick Foley had excellent chemistry with Stone Cold, whether he was teaming up with him or fighting him. The duo had 2 matches on pay-per-view, with their scrap at Over the Edge 98 being a classic brawl between 2 legends. Austin would defy all odds and become victorious. It made him. Despite already being a superstar, he looked even more heroic against Foley thanks to Vince's crazy stipulations. Next we've got Randy Orton. In the early 2000s, youngster Randy Orton would be undergoing his legend killer phase and would challenge Foley to a match. The hardcore legend would be hesitant due to ring rust, but still slowly gained confidence in his ability after eliminating Orton in the Royal Rumble and facing Evolution at WrestleMania. Foley upped the stakes and turned the offer into a hardcore match. And that's exactly what we got. The Legend and the Legend Killer faced off for Orton's IC title at Backlash 2004. We saw it all from a table and baseball bat covered in barbed wire, to Orton being thrown onto thumbtacks. While extreme matches were Foley's speciality, it was the first time Orton would experience such brutality. Orton would survive Foley's onslaught and win the matchup, which did wonders for his career, as he became the youngest world champion in wrestling history months later. And meanwhile, Foley calls it one of his best matchups of his entire career. Next, we got Vader. Many of today's wrestling fans don't really know about Foley's program with Vader. This is a rivalry that put him on the map, and basically give him his hardcore street cred. At the same time, the punishment that Foley took from Vader probably took years off his life. Vader had a reputation for working stiff, but that wasn't all. During their rivalry, Foley got powerbombed onto the concrete floor several times, and one of the times, he got up concussed and lost sensation in one of his feet for a while. Vader even once used a stun gun on him as well, on pay-per-view. And Foley even lost part of his ear wrestling Vader in Germany. It's a bit of a shame that Foley sacrificed his body to put Vader over and entertain the fans, but his employers at WCW took him for granted. Next, we've got Kane. Kane was one of the hottest acts in WWE during the Attitude Era, back when he was feared and still had his mystique. And one of the reasons for his great start in the company was his match against Foley at Survivor Series 1997. It was his first match ever, and Foley put him over in a dominant fashion, solidifying him as a monster. And I don't really have to say much else. We all know what Kane went on to be. A monster. Next, we got Edge. The mid-2000s saw the dramatic rise of Edge to stardom, and Foley was one of the catalysts for it. They feuded in 2006, after Edge accused Foley of costing him the WWE title. As a result, they had a brutal match at WrestleMania 22, and the two pulled out all the stops, brutalizing each other with weapons such as barbed wire baseball bats, thumbtacks, all that fun stuff. And we all remember the infamous ending of the bout, which saw a semi-retired Foley get speared through a flaming table on the outside. Along with the abrasions from all the pointy stuff used in the match, they both suffered from second-degree burns, as they didn't even apply anti-flame material to the table. Edge reportedly went into shock after the bout was over. However, this match did wonders in bringing the spotlight back to him, after he'd had a very short reign as WWE champ. Next, we got Sting. Upon his return to WCW in the early 90s, Foley started to show a more psycho and intimidating version of his Cactus Jack personality. And because he was a great worker as well, this made him the perfect opponent to put over WCW's hottest star in Sting. The pairing worked as they put on a clinic in their legendary Falls Count Anywhere matchup at Beach Blast 1992, a bout Foley called his best one for a long time. Unfortunately, we couldn't see more of this feud until 2009, when they were in TNA together and way past their primes. And finally, we've got New Age Outlaws. Mick Foley teamed up with Terry Funk to feud against the New Age Outlaws, and their dumpster match against the two degenerates is still fondly remembered. They collided with them at WrestleMania 14 and won the tag team titles in the process. However, the decision was reversed due to a technicality, and the Outlaws won the rematch. Throughout the rivalry, the two hardcore legends made the Outlaws look like legitimate heels, and would eventually put them over as the Outlaws were able to slip away with the belts. Like and subscribe to the video, click here for another, and if you want to become one of the Dawgs yourself, check the links in the description.